May 13th, 1943. The sun beats down mercilessly on the dusty plains outside Tunis, North Africa, where the air shimmers with heat and the acrid scent of gunpowder lingers like a fading ghost. Italian soldiers, their uniforms tattered and faces gaunt, for months of unrelenting desert warfare, drop their rifles into piles that glint under the relentless sky. The rumble of Allied tanks echoes faintly, mingling with the distant cries of wounded men and the flap of white flags hastily raised. In this moment of surrender, fear grips the hearts of thousands, expecting the worst from their captors. The Americans and British, whose propaganda they had been taught to dread as much as their bullets. This pivotal instant marked the collapse of Axis forces in North Africa, a theater of war that had begun with Mussolini's ambitious invasion in 1940, aiming to seize British-held Egypt and control the Mediterranean. Italy's 10th Army, bolstered by German reinforcements under Rommel, had pushed forward with dreams of empire, but supply lines stretched thin across the Sahara, leaving troops to battle not just the enemy, but hunger itself. By early 1943, Operation Torch had turned the tide. With Allied forces encircling over 250,000 Axis troops, including some 130,000 Italians, the surrender on May 13th was not merely a military defeat. It exposed the fragility of fascist promises. Where grand rhetoric of conquest masked logistical failures and ideological rot, this moment mattered because it shattered the illusion of invincibility, forcing Italian soldiers to confront the reality of captivity under a foe they had been conditioned to view as barbaric, and in doing so, it sowed seeds of doubt that would ripple through the Axis alliance. The Italian prisoners, hardened by the sands of Libya and Tunisia, braced for retribution. Mussolini's regime had drilled into them tales of Allied atrocities, hangings from makeshift gallows, public humiliations, or worse, a slow death in labor camps where men were worked until they dropped. Propaganda leaflets and radio broadcasts painted Americans as ruthless cowboys, eager to string up captives as warnings to Europe. Many carried hidden cyanide capsules or whispered prayers, convinced that surrender meant erasure, a fate worse than battlefield death. They remembered the sparse rations of their own lines, worm-infested biscuits, tepid water from canteens that tasted of rust, and occasional scraps of tinned meat doled out like precious relics. Officers back in Rome dined on meager portions, too, but the rank-and-file knew starvation as a constant companion. Their bodies whittled down to sinew and bone after campaigns where supply convoys vanished under Allied air raids. They expected chains, beatings, and bowls of gruelif. They were fed at all mirroring the deprivations they had endured under fascist command, where loyalty was rewarded with empty bellies and hollow victories. Yet as they were herded into temporary enclosures near Bizerti and later shipped across the Atlantic, the reality unfolded like a mirage turning solid. Guards distributed cigarettes and chocolate bars, items unseen in months, and soon, in holding areas and aboard transport ships, meals arrived that defied comprehension. Fresh bread, still warm from ovens, accompanied tins of corned beef and vegetables that retained their color and crunch, but it was the steak-thick cuts of beef, grilled to perfection and served with juices pooling on tin plates that stunned them into silence. This was no ration. It was abundance incarnate, a slab of meat larger than what many had seen in years, symbolizing the vast resources of a nation where farms stretched endlessly and machinery harvested plenty without pause. Historical records from the U.S. War Department detail how, adhering to the 1929 Geneva Convention, posts received daily rations of up to 3,200 calories beef, milk, bread, and produce far surpassing the 1,500 to 2,000 calories eked out in Italian field kitchens. One captured diary from a Sicilian private, recovered in a Louisiana camp, noted, "We thought it a trick, this meat so rich and plentiful, while our colonels back home scraped for crusts amid the ruins." Army summaries reported prisoners gaining an average of 10 to 15 pounds in the first month, their hollow cheeks filling out as they devoured meals that included steak as a staple, not a luxury. In the vast POW camps scattered across America, places like Camp Hereford in Texas or Camp Co. In Mississippi, the contrast deepened. Italian officers in North Africa had rationed food stingily, often prioritizing their own tables, while troops foraged for dates or scavenged from abandoned German depots. Back in Italy, the home front fared no better. Ration cards in cities like Naples allowed mere ounces of meat per week, with families boiling weeds and leather belts during air raids that left markets barren. Documented accounts from the International Red Cross inspections confirm that while Italian POs in Allied hands enjoyed balanced diets, their counterparts in fascist camps suffered malnutrition rates as high as 40%, with scurvy and dysentery rampant. A letter smuggled from a POW in Oklahoma to his family in Sicily captured the disbelief. They serve us steak, mama, real steak, every few days, with potatoes and butter. Our generals would weep to see it, for they starved us in the desert too. Fuel their pride. Another quote from Corporal Antonio Rossini upon his first camp meal. This is what they feed pigs, I thought at first, but no. It is for us, and it tastes of life we never knew. Factual data from U.S. military logs show weekly deliveries to camps. 4,000 pounds of beef, 3,000 pounds of chicken, and endless vegetables, quantities that dwarfed the entire monthly allotments for Italian divisions in Africa. This steak, recurring in mess hall trays and holiday feasts, became more than sustenance. It embodied American abundance, a tangible proof of democracy's efficiency. Where fascism hoarded and rationed, democracy produced in excess, farms mechanized, and markets free, yielding cuts of meat that spoke of fertile plains and unbridled innovation. Prisoners on kitchen duty marveled at the waste half-eaten steaks tossed aside, only 4 more to arrive, contrasting with their memories of scraping plates clean in the Libyan dunes. Thanksgiving 1943 amplified the shock. Tables groaned under turkeys, pies, and yes, steak alternatives like ham. But the beef remained a symbol, served with gravy and sides that evoked a world without want. One POW, Private Giuseppe Marino, reflected in his journal after gaining weight, "The steak mocks our Duce's empire. It is heavy with the freedom of those who grow without fear." Historical evidence from camp records indicates that such meals not only nourished bodies, but eroded loyalties. With over 45,000 Italians joining service units by 1944, laboring on American farms, where they witnessed tractors and refrigerators, tools of plenty absent in their homeland. The transformation was profound, reshaping perceptions forged in fascist indoctrination. What began as suspicion fearing poisoned food or tricks evolved into gratitude, then admiration. Mussolini's vision of autarky, where scarcity built character, crumbled against the reality of American plenty. Post wrote "Home of Paradise" in letters that bypassed censors, spreading whispers of doubt among remaining troops. Sergeant Frank Miller's explanation to a prisoner, "We eat like this every day." Nothing special unveiled democracy's core. Abundance not as conquest's spoil, but as the fruit of liberty and innovation. Ideologically, it shifted allegiances. Many celebrated D-Day and Rome's liberation, volunteering against Germany, their fascist facades cracking like dry desert earth. By war's end, thousands chose to immigrate, carrying seeds of change literally, in some cases, planting Italian vegetables on American soil, forever altering their worldview from one of enforced hunger to embraced plenty. In the quiet aftermath, as the last echoes of gunfire faded over the African sands, that simple steak lingered as a poetic emblem, linking captivity's surprise to broader truths. It whispered of freedom's quiet power, where abundance flows not from tyranny's grip, but from the open hands of democracy, nourishing not just bodies but souls, reminding that true strength lies in sharing the harvest, not hoarding it. Aid in this. The prisoners glimpsed a larger ideology, that prosperity, born of liberty, defeats despair, turning enemies into brothers under the same bountiful sky.